Oh, questions can be put to a particular candidate or to the whole panel, by the way. Fergus!
Matt, are you studying a postgraduate course right now?
Yes.
Right, so there's 2 postgraduates as far as I'm aware in this room. What have any of you 4 done to engage them in your campaign and that you're specifically promising them? Because I'm willing to bet if I walked into my lecture on Thursday, none of them other than me would know this is going on. Oh, sorry, bit of a retort.
I'm going to go from this end to this end, if that's agreeable.
I think this year the union has done a lot of, organised a lot of masters get-together, or has done in general evening events. I think it would be worth doing some kind of postgraduate meeting events in the evening with like free cheese and wine. We do it with the careers evening, and I think it's a good platform for those postgraduates to come together. Furthermore, we have tried to post a postgraduate representative this year. It hasn't gone terribly successfully, I think, and I think we should implement that next year.
How have you involved in this campaign? Have you been to any postgraduate lectures to speak to any of them about your
I've had a chat with the master students, and the last Masters Get Together event, I was here just having tea and coffee, and I had a chat with them. And look, well, I mean, the most useful one was like a one-on-one casual chat I had with a master student, and he said that the cheese and wine idea would probably work better than tea and coffee, or those evenings. Restaurant events which are a bit too late for some students, if that makes sense. So somewhere in the middle.
That's a good question. I've attempted to make my face known around some of the older students around the college. I've started taking part in the chapel choir, which actually has classes going on right now, and made myself present at the mass, for example. Kind of tried to make my face known in lots of subtle ways, I suppose. Also, there was also the careers dinner with the other day, which I took the opportunity to also, apart from talk to the those in employment, and also took the opportunity to talk to some of the postgraduate students as well there.
Yeah, one line.
One line.
One more line.
Concise.
Thank you, Fergus, for the question. In terms of what I've done to engage them in the campaign this year, again, at the campaigns dinner, no. At the careers dinner, I was campaigning. Get that around. So I talked to a few of the postgraduate students there and asked them what they wanted to see. And also, in terms of what I promised them, at the Equality Forum 2 weeks ago, it came up that some of the postgraduate students are asking government for the chance to present some of their material, which may not appeal to all postgraduate students, but for some of them, if they want to go into academia, it'd be a valuable experience. So I'm meeting with Father Holman and Catherine Powell on Wednesday to discuss some things, one of which is these, to see how viable it is to ask the postgraduates whether they want to present some of the material, how far it can go in terms of supplementing the undergraduate studies, and how much of an interest there is.
Thank you, Councillor.
Well, I have a good friend in doing a postgraduate degree, and she says that one of the things that would be particularly useful for postgraduate students would be increasing the amount of books lending that they can have, and I think that's a realistic thing that we can do. I also, in my speech just there, I spoke about how I want to make myself more available with extended office hours, but this doesn't just apply to undergraduate students. I also want to make myself more available to postgraduate students, and I understand that will require perhaps staying in the office a lot later than it will for undergraduate students, but that's something I would definitely commit to if given the very hopeful opportunity.
Thank you, candidate. Fergus, do you feel your question was adequately answered?
Kind of answered.
Any other questions from the floor? Oh, guys, come on, there's material here. Sachi.
This is for Dan. You said that a lot of what you said was just, I'm going to ask the students what they want and do that. Are you just going to be essentially a mouthpiece, or you're actually going to direct the union yourself? Because you have to make some decisions as president.
I believe what I said was I'd be asking the students what they wanted to see and incorporating that into the stance the union takes on issues. So obviously the president and the vice president will be sitting in the meeting, so they'll be party to information that undergraduates and postgraduates won't necessarily know. But I do think it's important that the student views and interests are used as a foundation from which to build from, understanding what the students want and then amalgamating that into the other information and then forming a stance which is inclusive of but not only the students' views and interests.
Very good. Megan, then Nadeem.
My question's for Mawia. You said in your speech that you want to support those students from lower income backgrounds. Can you just explain what you're going to do and how you're going to achieve this?
Definitely.
Thank you.
You have about 40 seconds.
Thank you, Megan. One of the things that's outlined in my manifesto are the government's changes to higher education funding, particularly the scrapping of the maintenance grants. Now, some of the scholarship and bursary packages offered by the college were contingent with this grants that are now scrapped. I want to make sure the college is at least doing all it can to make sure that it's at least treating students from lower income backgrounds fairly on financial boards. This is particularly to do with those. So I've spoken to students who found I think it was if you get a full maintenance grant, you get at least a third of that, and they found that very helpful. I know it would be easy, but I would love to implement that along which students from low income backgrounds were getting at least something that they weren't having to repay, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Woo! Does that answer your question, Megan?
Can I just ask one thing?
One follow-up, yes,
Have
of
you
course.
spoken to any higher member of college about whether that can actually be implemented?
I have spoken to one. Sorry. I have spoken to one member a senior member of staff who he told me that although it's not something that I have direct control over, it is something I can raise concerns about, particularly if students from lower income backgrounds, that they could do a lot better with that, and I'm sure they could.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nadeem.
Okay, so you picked up some mysterious superpower from Rob. So this is to everybody. There's only one thing you can make the college do next year that's different from the way it does now. What would you do? Followed up with, there's one thing you can also make the HSU do next year. What would you do? One thing.
Okay, candidates, I'm going to go from this end to this end. You have 30 seconds each. I suggest you use 15 for the college and 15 for the Students' Union, but that's up to you.
So I want the college to give more detailed reports regarding the situation of its future. We only get once in a while we get an email saying that we're in talks with somebody, and I don't think this is enough. I want the union to organise more referendums so that students on important matters at least feel as though their union is upholding their views correctly.
Next year, I'd like to see the college make more available the times, dates, to really publicise meetings that are going on that are open to students, so they can have a direct hand in talking to the SLT and talking to the union. And same thing for the union. I want to be able to sit down on a one-to-one person basis, or even in a group, and be open to questioning and challenge and see what people want from the union.
Great. Henry?
Well, if we go about one thing that the college can do, then naturally I'd like the college to sort out some sort of partnership for the future. I think that's a fairly reasonable, well not reasonable, but a reasonable wish, yeah. As for the student union, then obviously it would be to make a judgment on that decision and respond in kind if they're okay with that or not.
Stefan?
Okay, for the uni, can I say two half things? Is that okay? Well, it's like two general things, if that makes sense. One is just to have a successful partnership that with Roehampton that has a future for the Heythrop students now. In the sense, it would be lovely to have discounts to potentially continue our studies in Roehampton after. For the union, and in general, I have a
One line.
Fine.
One line.
For the union to be directly involved with have your say sessions and implement those, student staff liaison committees, and
Yes, thank you.
quality forward.
Thank you, candidate. Now, any other questions from the floor? Oh, yes. I was waiting for this moment.
Dun dun dun.
Ask a question.
It's a question for Dan. Many people in the room would have seen the open and pseudonymously signed letter that did the rounds a week or so ago, which made some fairly choice criticisms of the current executive, both of whom are in the room. The President was described as an OTO's waste of space, and the Vice President as an aspiring poet laureate who had never learned to write anything even resembling a poem. The rumour mill went slightly kind of within Heythrop standards, but it became active. Someone even suggested that I'd written this letter.
It was my theory, but I will have to press you for your question.
It's come up most often when I discuss with people is yours. So I'm wondering if you want to take this opportunity either to confirm or deny that you in fact wrote the letter, and then whether or not you think it made any valid points, or whether they're all entirely against.
Thank you.
But you have 30 seconds in which to do it. The letter did make some valid points, as any letter might. However, I do think that the humour displayed in it was not quite as received as well as it may have been intended to do. But the points do stand in that students have felt somewhat detached this year from maybe the possible partnership with Roehampton. They haven't felt as consulted as they might have done last year. So, for example, the referendums and the surveys on the St Mary's partnership haven't been as prevalent this year. Which is not to say the union hasn't excelled other areas, but that
30 seconds is over. However, Dan, I don't believe you actually answered the question. The question pressed you for a specific answer, wasn't you, who wrote the letter? Your choice whether you answer that or not. You have 30 seconds in which to do it.
I wrote the letter, however, it was kept anonymous because I wanted the focus to be on the issues contained in the letter, not whoever wrote the letter, which obviously didn't come to pass.
Thank you, Mr. Magda, and Magda, Fergus, Oliver, does anyone else want to go in the queue? 1 second, there we go. Right, Magda, go.
My question's for Dan as well. How would the letter you wrote in the line affect your relationship with people who continue to be members in the HSU? Do you think this could make your time more difficult?
With any job you have, there will always be people who will develop awkward situations with you, an awkward relationship. However, I would hope that they do understand that it was written with a slight hint of humour in it to maybe take away from the criticisms. However, if it has made them feel as if they can't trust me, or as if they don't like me, or for whatever reason, then I think that's up to them. And whichever they want to do with it, that's up to them. But I would encourage them to vote for the best candidate for the job, as they understand it.
Thank you. So, Fergus, you're next, then Caleb, then Nadine.
If Heythrop were an animal, what animal would it be? And you can't answer line.
Fabulous. We'll go from this end this time. You have 15 seconds to answer this.
To be consistent, I'll give the same answer as last year, which was a dove with a broken wing, and we need to fix the wing so it can fly again.
Do insects house animals? I'm not too precise on that, I don't do, but if there was another alternate life form species that Heythrop would be other than a lion, I would go with some sort of, you know what, let's go with a snake, because it's sort of the way it molts its skin, the way it constantly sliding around, fitting into corners, into places where people don't really see it or expect it.
I thought about this long and hard, and after much deliberation I decided to go with the Galapagos tortoise. Very rare, very unique, very old, and but on the edge of changing into something else, but everybody loves it anyway.
I would say a three-legged cat, because they're warm, they're lovely to be around, but they are noticeably unusual at times.
very traditional question. Thank you, Fergus. Next, Ron. I think Ron's going to find a voice, but not yet, Ron. Not yet. We'll get you in after the team. Caleb, your question, please.
Yeah, it's for all the candidates. So, for the VPA candidates, why are you going for that position and not the president? And for the president candidates, why are you going for that and not the VPA? I.e., what is it about you that makes what you bring so specific to that job?
Very good question. Mawia, we'll start with you and go down at this end. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Caleb. Well, I think what appeals to me most about the VPA position is the integrated academic side of it. I feel I've already had some good experience in that this year. I've been a program rep and I've developed a good working relationship with many senior members of staff, and I've been able to put myself out there for students who are experiencing academic difficulties in such a way that you wouldn't really deal with that if you were in a presidential role.
I did consider running for an executive officer position first because I thought I'd have an influence on the union, but when it came to the issues that I felt were most important and the skills that I felt I developed over the past year, I thought it would be best for myself and for the issues that were raised by myself that I realised that the best way to have the most impact and combat and resolve these issues was from the platform of the presidency.
Henry?
In the run-up to nominations, there was actually only one candidate, I believe, one and Ron. So for the sake of choice, I decided to run for presidency. But I also feel that the skills I developed at Open Society as the president there is more better suited for the president position than it is for vice principal academic.
I make the same mistake.
Did I say president?
Thank you.
In general, I felt that the experience and ability that I've gained this year was more transferable to VPA. Also, at the same time, it was a little bit more of a challenge. So I just why not? I thought I could help more by going for VPA than president.
Caleb, do you feel that's adequately answered your question? Yes. Wonderful. Ron? No, you had no question. Very good. Any other questions from the floor? Megan, and then Nadine. Actually, no, Nadine, you were in first. I'm terribly sorry. Oh!
Yeah. Trying to replace me still, Alex. Oh, I see how it is.
I'm sure I could come up with a better plan to do so, but not your question, please.
Yes, this one's actually for Dan, regarding your previous answer, so I hope the floor can remember his answers, but if they haven't, I've got a few select quotes. You said, it might not have been received as well as it could have been. Now, that doesn't sound like someone who's taking responsibility for having penned something which could well have offended it. How are we to understand that if you can't take responsibility for doing things wrong, why should you be the president of a union? And how can we trust that when things do go wrong, you'll be the figurehead to take the slack? The second part of my question is that you said that you wrote it anonymously, such that you would focus on the issues of the letter. I find it very difficult to understand why you chose to use language such as OTO's waste of space and a myriad of other insults if you really wanted to focus on the issues. So those are the two parts of my question.
I will allow you one follow-up question in this first instance, Mr. Holdsworth, and you will have 1 minute to answer.
In terms of responsibility, when I said it could not be taken as well as it could have, I like to qualify that in terms of it could not have been taken as well as it could have in terms of it could have been written in a way that would make people more receptive to it. So when I said maybe it could have been taken better than it could have, that would be the fault on the writer's part, not the person who read it. In terms of the second part, which may have slipped my mind, could you repeat?
Would you like me to repeat it? Yeah, so you said that you wanted to focus on the issues in the letter when you wrote it, penned it anonymously. Why such language?
Yes. Myself and other students, I've been talking to other students for some time regarding the union. And while it has excelled in many areas, for example, many of the events this year have been successful. Yes, greetings to HSU. There are, however, some issues that will become important next year that haven't quite been developed in terms of the stance by the union as they could have. So I believe publishing it anonymously was the best way to highlight the issues without drawing the attention to the person who wrote it. and the language was there as a way of sort of making people aware that it was there and spreading it. So it could have been written in a much, much better way, but I don't think it would have had the widespread impact that it did.
No further questions.
Very good, very good.
Mine's directed at that point.
Oh, okay, fine. Go on.
You don't really know what I was thinking. Sorry, say what you just said.
Can I let you discern that for a moment?
Distracted me with the whole...
It's all about the spotlight. Magda, think about it, and you may interject at the next interval.
Right.
Nadim,
You said
okay.
that if it was written in a different way, it wouldn't have the same impact. But the only impact it's had is that people have laughed at you because you've been seen as like... It's like if you were going to be David Cameron, if you wouldn't slag off your opposition like that, you didn't do it in a respectful way, you were completely disrespectful. How can I then look to you as my president if you're completely disrespectful of the HSU?
I'll give you a minute to answer that.
When I believe the letter was penned and came out before nominations were even open for the roles. So when I wrote the letter, I wasn't considering running. I thought, because I believed I could, highlight the issues and then go on. Obviously, the letter was received in a way which I should have foreseen, and I now know that it could have been raised in a different forum and had a much more positive impact.
It doesn't matter that you wrote it before nominations, because it
However,
still shows that you have complete disrespect for HSU.
However, when it came to the nominations, I thought that if I could criticise, but not stand up and be willing to change things and stand in front of you and answer these kinds of questions, then I believe that would not sit well with myself. I wouldn't be able to think of myself as having done anything good. So I believe when I saw the landscape coming up of the nominations, I thought that I'd be able to stand up and fight for the issues that I thought were most important, highlighted in the letter. And yeah, I think it could have done better, but I like to think that the issues are now highlighted.
Thank you, Mr. Tobin. To go back to the queue of questions, Sachi will be next, okay. Nadim, Fergus, Megan, and then Sachi.
Okay, so let's give it all a shot for positivity then, shall we? Let's flip my earlier question round. So what one thing has the college done really well this year, and what would you do to support it in its endeavours? Obviously the same question, but what one thing has the HSU done really well this year, and what would you do to support its endeavours?
Wonderful. Mawia, we'll begin with you. 30 seconds, as usual.
Well, I think the integration with other colleges has been excellent. In terms of events, I think some of the best events we've seen this year have been with our neighbours at Fulham or with the residents in Northern Halls. And I think if we can focus our attention on those places, because we have limited resources next year, I don't think it's a wise idea to be chasing tails that will never catch. So I think the union's done excellently in that respect, and I'll certainly continue that.
Very good.
I think the most positive aspect this year from the college's perspective has been the formation and put to use of the TOPSY committee and its continued uptake and support of our student experience this year. And I think one particular aspect of that the union's done very well is the welfare event. I went to the mental wellness and health being talk recently, am I right? Yeah, which had the 4 speakers which were absolutely incredible, and I want to make sure that next year, especially with the changes that are coming, the welfare structure doesn't collapse.
Henry?
I think the college has done a very good job in being proactive and securing that future for Heythrop that I keep talking about. Entering talks to Roehampton, doing a slightly better job than we did last year, keeping us up to date with one email sent over. Better than nothing. As the Students' Union, I think they pulled on some really amazing events this year. All things considered, without any undergrads, we've done amazing stuff with American Nights, with the festivals and the like. It's been good, all things considered. It doesn't feel like a dying university.
In terms of the union as well, I think Roehampton and how the union has approached Roehampton in the discussions has been going quite well. Also Topsy, the way that's being organised and what they've done this year, I think is worth noting and continuing that. And similarly, the way the HSU has helped and feedbacked to Topsy and has helped organise events in that sense, both with Topsy and HSU events, that's been great. Also, another good thing of the HSU is it's the relations it's built this year with other universities. For them, it's more obvious, but there's other universities that we've been in talks to, and hopefully that will lead next year to further.
Yes, that's a very useful Dutch word. Why do you gezelligheid?
I don't think we could understand that Dutch word, but nonetheless.
Fine. Entertainment.
So the question ordering now is Fergus, Megan, and Sachi. Jenny, you want to get in on the action as well? Anyone else want to get in the queue for a question? Very good, Fergus. Fire ahead.
Yeah, mine's for Dan. Right, so you promised in your manifesto that you'll have presidential question times. I'm pretty sure that's been promised before, and that it never really goes well. And by that I mean, when I'm willing to bet that you walk into this room having announced it and there's no one here for it, what are you going to do? And secondly, why do you think it'll be different this time around? That people will turn up?
May I just add a point of information to this question? It is a very, very true fact. Let me point out, Fergus. Dan, 45 seconds for this one.
In terms of why it was different from before, I mean, a lot of people think it's obvious that the president should offer, you know, you can come and talk to me whenever, open door, that thing. But I want to offer you a solid commitment that I will always be available within reasonable hours for you to come and challenge me, question me, all these things. And in terms of coming in here, I want to make sure that the structure that I offer, it could even be, you know, sitting here with a meeting, or it could be sitting in the office with you at a certain time. You know I'm there to be talked to. So in terms of the form it will take, I think it should be what works for the students in terms of what form they think it should best take, how the questions should be structured, and so on. So it's a primitive idea that I think can be fully developed next year.
Fergus, has that adequately answered your question?
No.
Would you like to ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, you basically just described the job role. Like, that happens anyway when you do your officer reports. People question you then. Why is that in your manifesto as a thing? It's a part of the job description. The default assumption is you will do it.
30 seconds.
It is an assumption, but I think it's an assumption that is easy to lapse out of in terms of the office hours can always be taken up with, oh, I had to go to a meeting, I'm sorry I missed you, or I'm sorry I was doing something else. I want to offer something you can hold me to and say, you said you'd do this, you're not doing it. I want to make sure that it's something you know that I will offer and I will continue to do. Even if nobody shows up, I will still have those hours there ready for you, in addition to the officer reports and in terms of the formal AGMs, OGMs and so on.
Thank you. Fergus, adequately answered?
I'm waiting for someone else.
Thank you. Megan.
My question is for Stefan. You said in response to Nadine's first question about what one thing would you do in the union, that you'd be more directly involved with Have Your Say events, SSLC and equality forums. Does this not just come with the role as in being an engaged student? Is this really the one thing that you'd want to focus the union on?
30 seconds.
It is part of kind of the description, both as a vice president and as a student, to be involved in that sense. But what we're saying is to try and strive to go to all of those, not as much as possible, if that makes sense. Well, no, it's as much as possible, but as in to be completely involved and strive to go to all of them. Like this year, Oliver and I have gone to a few of those, but not all of them. And I think it's worth shifting the focus on trying to implement our presence there. Yes.
Can I reply?
Oh gosh, okay,
Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, as an engaged student who doesn't get paid to do any role, I make it to most of those. So how, I just don't understand as a paid role, why it's not just, doesn't just come with the role that you would go to all of them, to be honest. Considering most of them are just open for anyone to attend.
It doesn't usually happen, it doesn't always happen because we have other stuff to do, if that makes sense. We get paid per hour and we have a limit of how many hours we can work per year. And obviously, we work in the hours in which we're not in lecture and which we can. And so if we don't go to those ones, it's because we're probably working on something else or we are in lecture, most likely.
I've got a rebuttal
to that point.
Oh, direct question. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, so you started out saying that you would strive as far as you can to get to all of these things, right? But then your response to her question just then is that it was physically impossible for you to get some of these things because you had lectures and other stuff on the table. Now I'm assuming if the stuff that was on the table was movable off the table, you would have already gone to these events. And you can't move your lectures, so how would you strive to get to these things?
We don't train people in questioning for nothing.
Well, that is a point that I want to change for next year. Just because things have been going in some way doesn't mean that's how I think it should happen next year, if that makes sense. I think because we've had we have the split academic affairs and the vice presidency role, I think that kind of, how you say, in student staff liaison committees and equality forums were kind of covered because we had two different persons going to that role. But next year will only be one, so it will be worth reconsidering what other meetings or other stuff we need to do, and avoid doing that and going to those. For example,
quick example.
Well, this year I've had to do a lot of publicity work, for example, because we thought that was needed for the event. It will be worth next year because we won't have an academic affairs to go to these meetings if I just whoever goes completely abandons the publicity if it's needed and just goes to those. That makes sense.
Very good. That's a very good example.
Very good, very good. Is it a direct follow-up, Megan?
Well, it was a follow-up to my point before that question was asked.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay.
It just sounds like you won't attend these things if you're not being paid for it. It sounds like even if your office hours were done for the week, you wouldn't attend them as an engaged student. And I'm just concerned about that. If you were running for this role, why would you not attend them if you're not being paid for it?
30 seconds.
I mean,
It said if your office hours are done and your lectures and things, and you only get paid per hour, it sounds like you won't attend them, even if you've done your office hours for that week.
no, it's just that it most likely happens that when there's one of these events, I am working or I do have lecture.
Right, okay. Okay, that
So
explains
is-
it. Okay.
Sorry?
That explains it better.
Yeah, sorry.
This is also the role of the HSU manager to ensure that all staff involved with union activities are managed properly and can attend the things that are directly important as per the strategic vision of the union. As far as I'm aware, of course.
It's not part of the job description, they're not obliged to attend all union events. I mean, it's something which is, I know from students is encouraged, but they're not contractually obliged to be at all students. I'm sure we
It was
understand
just
that
a
anyway.
point, because you said that you want to be more directly involved. That's my
Yeah,
question.
Good. Fergus, is it directly related?
I was kind of trying to open it up to everybody else, but I've got a different way of putting it.
Hold it. Very good. Sachi, you've been waiting a while.
This is to all the candidates. Firstly, can you define the union you're going to form in one word? And then, with the new general roles being formed, how are you going to tackle the organisation of the union and the limited availability of people that you're going to have? Because you could potentially have 4 people working for you this year who all want to do welfare.
Okay, so how are you going to manage your volunteer officers, basically, and all the requirements that they need to cover, and sum up the union in one word? Oh, very good, very good. Stefan, we'll start with you. 30 seconds.
My word would be versatility. And that's kind of related to this, because hopefully the people that we get in for the union will be versatile and will want and will have the skills to do a bit of everything. If not, I think that's quite an unlikely scenario, and hopefully we don't have that. But it's kind of, we have to see what manpower we do and what things are missing. If some things are missing, such like a publicity officer, well, we'll have to just go a bit more basic with like PowerPoint posters, if that makes sense. With welfare, we'll just kind of have to force someone to do it, or eventually, if we really can't find anything, we'll just have to become a signpost to Dominic McLaughlin and stuff like that. But basically, we will have to find measures according to what will be balanced the best time.
Henry.
One word for the union I'll make was probably efficient. Going on that, obviously I think when people sign up for the officer role, then they nominate themselves understanding that they might not necessarily always be able to do what they want to do all the time. I trust them to be understanding of that fact, so obviously